Okay, so to those who are already here, I guess we have to start. There are 19 participants as of this time, so probably the others will just follow as we go along. So I can see that there are students and parents. So welcome, good morning. Happy Sunday morning and happy Father's Day to all the fathers who are here with us right now. So to the kids, you will just be listening as well as we go along with our discussion. So for today's discussion, we will be sharing with you what is really online learning. Because I know that before you actually decide to enroll your child or your children, most of our parents really have questions like, how do we go about it? What are we going to do? And what are the students going to do? So there are a lot of questions that are in your mind. So this is the reason why we wanted to come up with this session this morning so that you'll have a little bit of background as to what will happen during the online learning of your child or your children. So I will start with my presentation. Hold on for a while because of technical problem. Let's see. Okay, so good morning once again. So for today's meeting, I am going to give you a very brief background as to what is online learning. So when we say online learning, it's basically an education that takes place over the internet. It is the most popular form of distance education learning today. Because of the pandemic, we're not allowed to have face-to-face. So actually, we don't have a choice but to go for online learning. So other terms, they use it also as e-learning among other terms, okay? It's referred to as e-learning among other terms. Now, how does an online learning work? So the school has to use a learning management system. So this learning management system allows teachers to work within a flexible framework that includes a number of different tools to enable learning and communication to occur. So in our school, okay, the learning management system, of course, comes with monthly charges. So in short, they're not free. So that's one of the reasons why a lot of you are asking, why are the fees like this? Okay, so because of the online or the learning management system that we're paying. So IS CDO will be using Quipper and then other paid contents or online learning platforms. So how will it work? Once the student will be enrolled, the student will also be uh, will be given a code to get inside the learning management system. And then the teacher was a control per subject. That's where the teacher will put all the activities, the assignment, and the schedule that the students will have to follow. So to simplify, an online learning works by logging on to the learning management system, and students will be able to see their activities, assignments, quizzes, and others. So learning can be synchronous and asynchronous. So later on, I will discuss the difference between synchronous and asynchronous and its advantages and disadvantages. So synchronous learning is an online or distance education that happens in real time. Like for example, what we're doing now, this is a synchronous activity. There is an interaction. I can see your facial expressions, okay? Although I cannot just hear you because I muted everybody for you to be able to really listen to my discussion. So this is a synchronous activity. Asynchronous learning occurs through online channels without a real-time interaction. So for example, if a teacher will decide to give an advanced reading activity, okay, and then pointing to or citing to a certain website, that is an asynchronous, okay, learning. So synchronous learning is a kind of learning that happens in real time. So there is an interaction between students and teachers and a specific virtual place through a specific online medium at a specific time. So for example, if the teacher will say, we are going to have a video conference through Zoom, so that's asynchronous learning. So there is a specific time. Okay, so if the teacher will say, we are going to have a video conference at 8 o'clock in the morning. So all of the students in that particular class are expected really to be online at 8 o'clock. Okay, because it is very important that we should also what's this set house rules, even if it's an online learning, so that students will really have a conditioning of their minds already that even if they are at home, it's still a virtual classroom and they need to follow house rules. So in other words, it's not exactly anywhere, anyhow, anytime. Okay, so methods of synchronous online learning include video conferencing. That's what I have said a while ago. Teleconferencing, live chatting, and live streaming lectures. So for example, in YouTube, for example, if the teacher will demonstrate something and the teacher will decide that it's going to be live, so that is still asynchronous learning. So what are the advantages of synchronous learning? So there is a classroom engagement. Why? Because there is an interaction between the teacher and the students. So more or less, it's like really a classroom setup, but it's just not face-to-face. It's just virtually. Active discussion, there is an immediate feedback and a personal familiarity that you can get only through real-time interaction. And then there is a dynamic learning. So allows for a more dynamic exploration of topics, ideas, and concepts than is possible in a medium with time lag. And then there is an instructional depth. So students get to interact regularly and frequently with their teachers. That is with synchronous learning. Now, if there are advantages, there are also disadvantages, okay? Rigid schedule, meaning you really have to stick to the schedule. So lectures and class discussions will take place at established meeting times. So if it's 8 o'clock, it's really 8 o'clock. If it's 9 o'clock, it's really 9 o'clock, okay? So the students will really have to follow that schedule as well. So make sure you can manage your synchronous learning responsibility around your schedule. Now, for parents, the teachers, we already agreed in our school that we will also be sharing to the parents the schedule, okay, of the activities that we are giving to our students in that particular week, so that you can also help in monitoring whether or not your child or your children are actually performing or even doing the submission, okay, and so that you would also know what time they should be online, for example, if there is a Zoom conference. So technical difficulties, that's one of the disadvantages. So for some, slow internet connection, okay, that could be a problem, crashing hard drives and dying of batteries. So you have to make sure that, for example, if tomorrow there will be like a 2 hour, okay, for example, for 4 subjects, that's equivalent to 2 hour, for example, of a synchronous video conference, for example. So you have to make sure that if you're using your tablet or you're using your iPad, that is already charged so that it's not going to be low bat. So these technical difficulties can become anything, okay, from an inconvenience to a disaster, because more or less there will be a tendency that the child could not attend anymore, okay, because of such problem. Now, on the other hand, when we say asynchronous learning, it is a learning that happens on your schedule or on the schedule of the students. For example, there are activities, reading or something like answering for this particular activities. So the students can now, can do, can adjust, okay? Like when will the students perform that, or when will the students accomplish, for example, his or her written assignment. So the teacher will provide materials for reading lectures, for reviewing assignments, for completing and exams for evaluation. So the students will have flexible time frame. But when we say flexible time frame, it doesn't mean that you'll just be complacent, meaning, because it's due pa on Friday, and since it's still Tuesday, okay, I can still do my my online games because anyway Friday pa ang schedule. So it cannot be like that, okay? Because we really have to stick to the submission as well, because that's part of the training. If in the face-to-face classroom setup, the teachers will really, the teachers are really strict with the deadline, and so is in the online learning. So example, self-guided lesson modules or streaming video content, exchanges across discussion boards or social media platforms, okay? So that is an example of asynchronous learning. Now, what are the advantages of asynchronous learning? So flexibility, as I've said, you can actually choose. For example, I have 5 homeworks, okay, due for next week. So the students now can create your own schedule. Like for this particular day, I have to do my homework in this particular subject. Maybe later in the afternoon, I have to do this. Okay, so there is a flexibility. So learning will typically revolve around materials that can be accessed on students' time. Okay, pacing. So self-guided, they have to read at their own pace, and then they can view at their own time. And then affordability, because it's offline. So the lessons can be administered without day-to-day instruction. So the reason why I discussed to you the synchronous and asynchronous learning, because these are actually two types, okay, or methods that the teachers will have to practice in on an online in an online learning, okay? Because there could be days in which the students are just self-guided. They will be the ones to read. They will be the ones to discover, for example, the learning. And then once they go video conference, for example, that's a time that the difficulty, for example, if the students will have questions, then that's a time that the teachers will have to help them with those things that, for example, they're having difficulty with. So what are the disadvantages of asynchronous learning? Isolation, because we know that all students have different learning styles. Now, for example, if I work best with others, okay, or in a group, one of the disadvantages for online learning is since I'm doing it alone, so sometimes it seems lonely, okay? But as I've said, because of this situation, we actually don't have a choice but to embrace this kind of approach. So this atmosphere is less collaborative, okay, the risk of apathy to those who are comfortable learning on their own. You wouldn't feel enthusiastic about the subject matter without the support and evaluation of a teacher. So that's why there should always be an open communication between the students and the teacher, so that if ever there are difficulties that the student is facing, then that can be resolved through communication with the teacher. So, uh, so I'm done with the discussion of synchronous and asynchronous. So here in today's meeting, I also posted some questions that during my webinars, okay, more or less these are, oftentimes these are the questions that I always encountered from, from parents who are asking about online learning. So most probably these are also the questions you have in your mind. So that's why I included it here in the meeting. So is an online class the same as self-paced class? So the answer will be no, because online classes are similar to independent study. Most online classes are not self-paced, okay? Because there are dates to follow, there are documents and class participation, okay, in which that you really have to submit. So homework, other activities, and online class participation must be completed by preset dates and time. So it's not according to maura mong good ni kaya sa akong anak, so dili siya dapat ano. So it's not like that, okay? Because there are things that have to be submitted on time as well. So how much time do students have to spend online? Now, maybe you're thinking, because I've seen this in Facebook, there is a picture in which, di ba, parang a mother yata, okay, holding a stick, and then while the student is there in front of the computer, okay? So it doesn't happen that way, because according to World Health Organization, a maximum of 3. For example, maybe that's for higher years, let's say grade 9 and 10, especially with their science subjects, in which it really requires them to have longer number of hours. So minimum of 2 hours, okay, to be online, and a maximum of 3 hours. Okay, it's not like the face-to-face na from 7:40 up to 1:30 in the afternoon, or from 7:40 up to 3:30. So it's not like that. So a maximum of 3. Okay, the longest na yung 3, minimum of 2. So how will we do that? We will still have scheduling, okay? Because I know that there were questions being raised to a registrar that, for example, how the case down na they only have like one computer at home, what will happen? Okay, so we have to remember that there is synchronous and asynchronous. And then when the teachers will create their activities, we will be monitoring, and then we will see to it that it's not going to be parang in conflict with others. So dapat we should also create a schedule for them to be what time and what day they have to be online. And then maximum, let's say for a particular subject, if there is a need for that subject to have for example, a synchronous learning, maximum of 30 minutes, okay, for a subject, okay? So let's go to the next one. Do students have to log on to class at a particular time? So no, they have deadline. So it doesn't mean that ay dapat every day at 8:30 dapat, okay? My son should be there in front of the because there are days in which they don't have to log on, okay? Maybe it is asynchronous. So for example, if your children will say, Mama, I have to do my assignment, I have to do my readings, so you have to consider that as a class time as well, okay, with your child. Because when I remember this particular concern coming from a student when we made the survey. Remember the survey that we put in our FB page? I've read one of the concerns of the student is that there is no house helper now at home, and then if I don't know if that student is a he or she. So if she or he is at home, his parents would likely tell him or her to do household chores. So that's the reason why we ask for this conference, so that you dear parents will have to understand that it doesn't mean that just because your children are just sitting down there and doing nothing, you just didn't know, maybe your child is reading on something or working on something, that's considered as a class time. Okay, so that's one of the concerns of that particular student. How can I do that if my mother will tell me to do household chores? She will get mad at me. Okay, reality check lang po yan. So next, is taking a class online easier than a regular class? The answer will be no. The course content in an online class is usually identical to that of a face-to-face class on the same topic. So some people think that workload is even more demanding than a regular face-to-face class, in that you have to be a self-directed learner. So the motivation, the interest should be there in the student, because if the student, okay, will be lazy, okay, the student would likely end up, okay, getting poor grades because the student failed to submit, okay, assignments or things that should be submitted on time. So you have to be, the students have to be self-directed learner and stay motivated and stay on top of their workload independently. Then this one, how is online teaching different from traditional classroom teaching? Of course, there are limitations because it's online. You cannot expect that the face-to-face is actually different. So, even us as parents, okay, most of us didn't experience online learning. So this is something different, and we really have to understand our children because it's something new to them as well. So the online model emphasizes an interactive learning environment designed to stimulate dialogue between instructor and students and among students themselves. Because like, for example, here in Zoom, for example, if there is a particular topic that the students will have to discuss, the teacher can do breakout rooms in which they can discuss with a partner. Okay, then later on, the teacher will have to what's this entertain whatever difficulties, for example, or things that came out through their sharing. Okay, so aside from about online learning, this morning I also wanted to share um, tips for parents, especially that this is something new to all of us. Okay, so sorry, I just have to. Okay, so I have to go back. The online process requires both instructor and students to take active roles. The instructor will often act as a facilitator, organizing activities that engage students directly rather than relying too heavily on lectures and memorization. So as I've said, that's why it's very much needed that the students will really have a motivation to study. So dapat before the start of the class on August 24, there is already a mind conditioning among our students that this is already a classroom setup. Although I am just at home, but this is a classroom setup, and this is now how my classroom looks like. Okay. So when and where do classes take place? So interactions take place regularly through the learning management, through Quipper, through Zoom, through Google Classroom, and even Edmodo. Okay, for loweries, I think we will be using the Edmodo as well because it's easier for parents to log on using Edmodo. So what are the parents' role this time in online learning? That's why I wanted to share with you also the tips. So because of the increase of autonomy and self-motivation required to be successful in an online program, parent involvement generally is a key indicator of a successful virtual school experience. Now, I know that a lot of you were saying, how am I going to help my child? I am actually working. Now, we're actually not saying that you should be there, okay, the whole day. It's just that you have to check, okay, from time to time how your child is doing, okay, at home. So studies show that there is a direct positive correlation between a parent involvement and student success. So simply put, virtual schools work better when parents take an active role in their child's education. So kayo, dear parents, your role this time, your support really is very much important, okay, for the success of the online learning. So first one, daily or weekly monitoring. So for those who can afford daily, why not? But if you are really that very busy, you have to make sure that at least weekly you have to monitor your child. So physical presence can be very helpful. Although not all parents can stay at home most of the day, daily and or weekly monitoring should still be a priority. So daily checking on the progress of your child, especially at the beginning of the virtual school experience, is very critical because it's, as I've said, this is something new, okay? So second, set and keep a schedule. So being a positive encourager, okay, you have to set and keep a schedule. As I've said, you parents will have to be notified as well. What are the schedules? What are the expected activities that your child will have to perform? So that more or less it's going to be balanced. This is what we will do, and this is what you will do at home as well. So next is encourage and motivate. So being a positive encourager is possibly the most important role for the parent in a virtual school setting. So you have to praise your child's successes, okay, because as I've said, it's something new. Even you yourself, okay, have not experienced it. So our children nowadays need really understanding, because it's not easy to be away from the classmates, not to be with their best friend, for example, every day. So it is actually hard. And then make sure they have any materials necessary to complete all assignments. For example, stable internet connection, okay, do they have a laptop, okay, or do they have, for example, others, I know because in the survey I was reading that some don't have laptops, they only have smartphones. So for asynchronous learning activities, they can also make use of their smartphones, but due to the small size of the screen, I think that depends on your child, no, if it's workable in your child. But um for the best talaga is if for example you have a PC or you have a laptop, then that's the best. But if there's none, then it's still good, okay, a smartphone is still usable. And then provide an environment conducive to learning. This is very important. Make sure that we have a place in the house in which they can call it as their learning area. Now, for example, look at the setting now in the house. Did you prepare, for example, a certain place or a certain corner in your house as the learning area of your child? Did you prepare that certain place in which it's free from so much noise, or probably it's free from people passing by or opening and closing the doors? Now, it is very important that you should provide an environment conducive to learning. So that's one of the things, okay, that you need to prepare as well, so that by the time your child will be in that particular place, you would know, okay, my child is now in the learning area, because that also helps in the mindset, diba? That if you have that particular place in the or corner in the house, once you're there is already a mind conditioning that I am here to learn, I am here to converse or to look at or to learn or to discover what are the activities or to discuss something with my teacher. I am not there to play games, but I am there to learn. Okay, so it's really very important that you should provide an environment conducive to learning. And then don't teach, help them understand. So don't go to the extent of answering the activities for your child. If there are difficulties, as I've said, you can teach your child to communicate with the teachers, because we have to make sure that there is also an open communication between the teachers and the students. But I'm also asking, for example, if it's already like in the middle, I mean, mga 10:30 or 11 na, please naman. Teach also, we should also teach our children, no, na ay, do not na disturb your teacher at this time, because probably your teacher is resting or probably your teacher is already sleeping, okay? So next, make sure all work is completed. So any work that remains incomplete is incomplete for a good reason and has a time bound, okay? So as a general rule, The reason why there's a deadline, because you will be dead after the deadline. Okay, so that means that if it's really a submission for that day, then it's really the submission for that day. For the lower years, because they have books, we can create Dropbox as well. Okay, for example, for the writing activities, and other things that will be answerable, for example, using the pages of their books, we can also assign days for parents to, drop the books. Okay, we have drop boxes, and then the teachers will just get it and will look at and check the works of the children. That's for lower years. So help them check messages and communicate with school. So check for messages daily from teachers and other students, and make sure to reply to any messages that require one. So for example, if the teacher has an instruction, so as a parent as well, you need to what's this? To inform the teacher, for example, hi miss, we did not receive, or I know that there is something, but my child has a problem. Okay, that is very important. Okay, it's very important that you would also inform us, because how can we help you if you will not also inform us? Encourage self-direction. So I've always been repeating this: self-motivation, self-interest, self-direction. So we need to encourage our children to have self-direction. So the more they own the learning and ideally have voice and choice in their work, the easier and more fulfilling everything will be for everyone. Okay. Now, for example, you can have an agreement. For example, if it's at home, then you can ask, for example, for let's say grades for the grade 10 children. You can ask like, oh anak, when is your free time ba na you'll not be doing your homework, or you'll not be doing reading activity, so that you can probably help me with that household chores, not in the middle. Okay, because that's the concern. As I've said, that's the concern with one of the students. What if my mother will get mad at me because I cannot do this? Okay, if it's class time, it's class time, regardless. Even if it's at home, but it's really class time. Okay, so encourage self-direction. You need to clarify things. You need to have a conversation already with your children regarding the online learning, because as I've said, mind conditioning is very important. Then honor the complexity of learning. Ma'am and sir, online learning is something new to all of us. So it's something complex, it's something difficult, it's something that it cannot just be embraced on the first day. So you really have to be very understanding to your child or children. So realize that your child needs a wide range of support: academic, collaborative, psychological, technological, disciplinary, and others. Okay? So they really need your support. So for example, ma, I need to have this because I'm going to, no, okay? You need to understand, okay? And help your children. Psychologically, okay? Because I've learned this in the webinars that I've attended. As a parent, it's also our job to ask, where are our children now at this pandemic? Have you, what's this? Have you talked to your children, like how they feel? What is their reaction? What is their concern? They must just be probably in their phones, okay, playing games. They might look okay, but I'll tell you, they are not okay, just like us, okay? Because more so that their summer is actually not normal, because normally summer vacation is the time for them to go out, the time for them to be with their friends, with their family members, to be with their relatives, to go biking, okay? But it did not happen that way. So there are still issues, okay? Psychological issues, emotional issues. And I know that your children, okay, are also sad because they could not see, okay, face to face their classmates, whom they really miss so much already after how many months? 3 months already, okay? So honor the complexity of learning. So realize that your child needs a wide range of support. So that is Very important. Okay. Now, this one is the reason why I included this, because in the webinars that I've attended, this one is very important. Beware of complacency. Okay? Because if you're complacent, you yourself, okay, as a student, for example, in the side of the students, okay, they themselves are the biggest obstacles. Why? If, for example, your child, okay, is, let's say, didn't have the motivation to learn or to get up early, or maybe your child will sleep late thinking that, anyway, my schedule can just be adjusted. If, for example, they have a video conference at 8 o'clock, then it's also your responsibility to make sure that your child, okay, sleeps early so that your child can wake up early and attend the online class, okay? Because if the child is complacent, then that's where the problem is. So anything, or the success of online learning actually is, lies on the connection between the school and the parents, okay? That's why you as parents, we have the biggest role, and we as school also have the biggest role to make this online learning a success. Okay? Let me share. Wait. Wait. I will. Let me. Wait. Maybe I. Do you have questions? In the chat box, for example, you can, in the chat box, you can type your questions if you have things that you need to clarify. May see. Anyone was a question? So that I will just unmute, for example. Okay, this time I unmute everybody. So let's try to find out if you have questions.
Hello, Miss Emily.
Ma'am, sir, you have questions?
Yes, Miss Emily.
Yes po.
Yes, I'm Juris, the angkot of Alexandria.
Yes, yes, sir.
I have four items. I have four items lang to
Mm-mm.
probably you don't need to answer to that right now, no. But I
Mm-mm.
hope you can just take note.
Uh-uh.
Um, but because it was not mentioned during in your presentation. I'd like to know lang how the performance will be measured since yun nga, it's purely online and
Yes, sir.
the kids were used to the to the face to face
Yes, yes, sir.
face to face na interaction.
Mm-mm.
And second is preparedness of the school for
Yes, sir.
the parents naman, ma'am.
Uh-uh.
I know now we've been preparing for the setup for the students, but for our side, since yun nga, we will also be there will also be minimal interaction between physical interaction
Mm-mm.
with the teachers. Baka we would like also also like to know yung tools for parents to track to track the
Yes, sir.
lessons, to track
Yes.
the performance of the
Mm-mm.
of our kids. And then since yung classroom learning was we slowly we slowly introduce our kids from kinder to where they are now.
Yes, sir.
I and I know and I acknowledge also now we don't have much time now to really indulge in a ano ba adjustment period for the kids, but
Mm-mm.
still we will need allowance for learning curve.
Mm-mm.
Kasi yun nga, some of these kids have been performing very well in the classroom, but we don't know how much or how fast
Yes.
they can adjust right away to the online learning.
Mm-mm.
So we expect the school na since this is new to all of us, but
Yes.
we would
Mm-mm.
expect the school to be at least a few steps ahead sa
Mm-mm.
students, sa parents. And then lastly, ma'am, yung cost implications for this shift, how much it would cost. Would there be any increase to the current tuition?
Mm-mm.
So yun lang, ma'am. Those are the four
Okay.
points I'd like to ano.
Okay, sir. So maybe to some of your questions, we will be dealing with that in later days. So for the assessment, since for the learning online learning platforms, the teachers will have their training as well. We will start on June 29, and the whole month of July and August, that's the time we will be planning already for the lessons and everything, for all the activities. So for the assessment, we're going to have a different session with that. Okay, we're going to have a webinar for parents for the assessment, so that you will really know how your students will also be graded. And then for the preparedness for the school, and since we will already be starting with the online, trainings for the teachers, we will update the parents as well. Okay, we'll keep you track on that. And then for the classroom management, when we will already in with our system, like for example for the quick prep, because there is also a way in which the parents will have to be registered also online for that particular ano. There is a ano for parents, so that all you have to do is just what's this, log on to that, and then for that particular class you will be able to know what are the activities, okay, the deadlines and everything that the teachers will put, it will be there. So that's for the ano. And then for the tuition, you can ask Miss Fe or the school registrar or our finance office. They already have the rates or the fees, sir. Mm-mm.
That's Miss Kinky.
Okay. So what about okay, si Ma'am Buscaino? Can I ask also, Ma'am? Yes, sir. Sir Buscaino, yes. I've seen here in the chat box. Can I ask something also? Yes, Mr. Buscaino or Mrs. Buscaino, are you going to ask a question? Who else would want to ask questions? Anyone? So expect that this will not be our first and last. There will be other webinars that we will be hosting as well. Okay. Anyone who still want to ask questions? So to those who are interested to know our fees, you may just to our FB page as well. You can send your message, or maybe to Miss Pinky or to Miss Pe. Okay, they can already answer your increase for the tuition fees. Anyone who else will have questions? How will okay? This is for the students to review things discussed in the sessions. Yes, po, it's recorded. Mm-mm. Uh, Actually, this webinar is for parents. We will also have webinars for our students. Before the August 24, we'll also have a series of webinars for our students. How will we deal with technical issues such as power internet interruption? So the will be okay. So there's another question. How will we deal with technical issues such as power or internet interruption? Will the schedule be moved? Of course, one of the things that I've really learned from all the webinars also that I've attended for online learning, we really have to be very, what's this? Uh, we need to address that problem as well. Now, for example, if in that particular area you have a power interruption, we can understand it. So, for example, there is a delayed of submission because there's a problem with the internet, or probably the connection of the internet is very poor, or we consider those situations. Of course, we'll consider those situations. What else? So there is a question, if ever there will be more than 2 students to enroll in your school, can we choose their time for them? What is the time that you're referring to, ma'am? The time for them to have an online class, or anyway, we will have a schedule for classes, ma'am. Okay, we have a schedule. So maybe your concern is the schedule for to be online. For example, if there are 3 of you in the house, and then this is my understanding, huh? This is my understanding for the question, because it's something vague for me. Are you concerned, for example, if there are 3 students and then you'll be online, simultaneously online, the 3 of you? Is that what you are worried? Okay, as I've said, we'll have schedule. You will know. That's why it's very important that our teachers will already be reporting to school, because when they will be making their activities, we can plot. For example, for grade 4, we can plot that is for the particular subject who will go online, so that we can somehow monitor. Okay, they cannot be together. Okay, at the same time. So is attendance being checked as well? Of course. Okay. For example, if there is uh, if that particular activity is a collaboration between 2 students, for example, then it has to be, it will be checked. Anyone else have other questions? Anyone else have questions?
No.
So I guess if there's none, or maybe as of the moment, you still can't think of anything, but then later on you have, just PM us through our FB page, okay? You can just PM us, if, for example, if you have mga questions. Is the online class daily, ma'am? I've already explained that a while ago, that there can be synchronous and asynchronous learning. There can be synchronous, in which there's an online interaction, but it doesn't have to be daily, okay? Because there could be asynchronous activities for them to do. So as I've said, if you have more questions, you can just send it to our FB page, because I know today is Sunday and most probably you are celebrating your Father's Day. It's almost lunchtime because it's already 11 o'clock. So there's no other questions. So no more questions na. Android phones be a conflict to use? No, it's not. So if there are no other questions, Can we call it a day, everybody? I unmuted everyone already. So thank you very much. Thank you for coming and joining us this morning. As I've said, if you have other questions, you can just PM us to our FB page. Thank you. Bye-bye to the kids.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Miss.
Yeah. We'll have other
Bye.
sessions.
Bye, Miss Emily.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you also for coming.
Thank you.
Mm.
Sila.
We're gonna leave
Kita ka
now.
na guys.
Huh? Leave now. Here.
Okay, go ahead sila.
Let's go.
Paano ba eh?
Okay. Leave now.